This is my new 2025 Suzuki DR-Z4S. And in this video, I'm going to be introducing you to the DR-Z4S. You probably already know what it is, but in case you don't, it is a dual sport motorcycle. A motorcycle that's designed to do decent on-road riding as well as decent off-road riding. There are now a lot of bikes in the segment, some more focused towards the off-road or even competition end of things, and some that seem to be more focused on-road traveling dual sports, or more like towards the adventure style of riding. But I have always wanted a Suzuki DR-Z, and unfortunately the carbureted engine that is no longer on the new models is what kept me away. I know that carburetors are not all that bad and they are easy to work on, but for my riding and where I was riding at the time, a carbureted engine was not a great choice for me. But now that the Suzuki DR-Z is a fuel-injected engine, here I am on my very own DR-Z. This video will basically be an introduction to this bike, what it is in case you haven't seen anything on it just yet. We will do some road riding, I will get into some off-road riding, and we will do a mix of roads like this. I'll get to some off-road, we'll do some light off-road with the bike, and then we'll push it on maybe an actual trail. But before I go any further, let me find a spot to stop. I'll hop off the bike and give you a quick tour, and then we'll start the off-road, I suppose, sooner than I expected to. I didn't use my directional. This turn snuck up quicker than I thought it would. So, let me just go ahead and I'll stop here. This looks fine. Look at that. I just crossed over 100 miles. So, this is the DR-Z. I'm so excited to have one of these things. If you had been subscribed to my channel already, you know that I had a Tuareg 660. I do still have the Tuareg 660, and I have absolutely no plans to give that bike up. This is a completely different machine and will serve a slightly different purpose. But beautiful bike. I'm not going to go into the whole spec sheet stuff. Good travel in the front, good travel in the rear, and as you can see, a real good bit of ground clearance there, at least from what I'm used to, which is the Tuareg, which is around 9.5 inches of clearance down there. Let me turn this so my camera can catch me and I can alternate the shots a little bit. Love it or hate it with the design. I personally love the way this bike looks. I think it looks absolutely excellent. But again, this isn't supposed to be a spec sheet sort of video. The only thing I do want to cover on this machine in particular is I have these stock tires. There's some sort of some version of the Trail Winner, you know, kind of more of like a street tire, but we're gonna off-road with them today. Definitely better than what I see coming stock on adventure bikes, but again, this is a different machine. So we will get into some sand, which I'm not very comfortable in sand, but this is a light bike. These are narrow tires. It shouldn't really be too bad. But I suppose we'll find out in the very near future. Other things to note before, something that just kind of separates this from some dual sports out there is this dash here. I don't think I need to be in neutral for anything, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, obviously you've got your information up here, your gear indicator, your fuel indicator, which is nice to have. The previous DR-Z did not have one. Got a clock right there, excellent. Big miles per hour front and center. You do have your information down here. You can cycle through battery voltage, miles per gallon in US. Doing pretty good so far. And your mileage, so really basic stuff, and you do have a trip meter that I just really don't have any interest in using. But something that separates this from some other dual sports on the market, you do have ride modes, and I know it's a relatively controversial feature. I actually like having them. I previously didn't think I'd like them at all, but on my Tuareg, the ride modes are something I actually really like about the machine. On this bike, it's actually really easy to operate. You've got your mode button. Press that. You could see that that's highlighted. That's mode A, and that's throttle response. So what mode A does is when you request throttle, it kind of gives the bike a little bit more than you requested to make it feel more responsive and a little bit snappier. Further into the throttle range, it's still pretty linear, but just that initial throttle gives you more feedback, or at least translates to more power, and just makes the bike feel a little bit more lively. Mode B here is a bit more linear, so it's kind of one-to-one throttle wherever you're at. Give it 10% throttle, you'll probably get 10% throttle. Give it 90, you'll probably get 90% throttle. So that's the standard, just like one-to-one mode. And then you have mode C. That's the final of the three modes. And that one's kind of the opposite of A, where when you give it throttle, that initial response is actually curved down before it gets linear. So it smooths out that power delivery. Pretty good for sticky situations, wet conditions, or even new riders. So while it does have modes, all pretty basic there, nothing overwhelming. Traction control is where it gets a bit more interesting. Let's just start at the bottom here. Traction control 2, as far as I'm aware, is the most invasive version. So think of it like your slick mode traction control, or if you're just really scared of losing traction, you can put traction control 2 on. You have traction control 1, which is less invasive, but it's still there, and I've definitely kicked out traction control 1, just kind of messing around on the bike so far, but I'd never found it too invasive. Thankfully, you can totally turn traction control off. It'd be kind of horrible if you couldn't on a bike like this, but no issues there. Something I've come to like on the bike already in my short mileage is traction control mode G, which is basically the gravel mode. And traction control G is what I leave the bike in. It allows a fair bit of slip in the rear wheel, but it doesn't feel like it's cutting power. On my Tuareg 660, when I put the least invasive traction control mode on, which is traction control mode 1, it lets me get away with some slip, but I can feel the power cut, and it's a little kind of jarring and also pretty invasive if you're trying to get up some loose terrain. On this bike, traction control mode G, it lets the wheel slip, but I never feel a hard cut. I've not had the bike in really terrible situations yet, so maybe I'll have different opinions on that down the line. But traction control mode G is actually really, really solid. The bike does have both front and rear ABS. On this model, you can press and hold this button, which you do unfortunately have to be going 0 miles an hour. I tried doing it in neutral while rolling, and it doesn't work. You have to come to a complete stop there. You hold it, you see ABS rear, it's off right there, and then if I hold it again, it should just say ABS off. There we go. Front ABS is now disabled as well. So you can completely disable ABS on the bike, which is pretty great. And then one click, you go back to the other mode, and then I think you've got to hold it to yeah, you got to hold it again, I guess, or maybe click it again to turn that up. Let's try that. So ABS rear, if I click it here, it turns off. So you have to, I guess, be an ABS rear to click it and turn it off. If I turn off front and then click it, it just puts front back on. And if I click it again, it turns off completely. Minor complaint on the bike, but I know this won't be a huge deal. If I do have ABS off and I happen to turn the key on the bike, like I'm getting off and just checking out a line before I actually commit to it, and I turn the key back on, that ABS is back on. I'm not a huge fan of that, but it's really not a big bother. I'm not like a crazy rider, and I'm not planning to do anything too insane with this. But since we are about to be off-roading, let's just turn the ABS off and leave it there. I'll start the bike up, which this bike, you can see its kill switch position is killed. Put that there to run, basically. And something I've actually kind of enjoyed on this bike, although it's rather goofy, is you just, boop, you press it, and it will crank the right amount of times to start the engine. And this isn't a pre-programmed crank like, it'll turn over 5 times and then stop, and hopefully the engine's running. I've had some instances where it cranked a handful of times and the engine sounded like it was going to start and then didn't. And then it kind of just kept cranking until the engine was actually running. So pretty cool there. I'm contemplating going up the road before I go to the trail. We already saw enough road riding. I'll do a longer video on that in the near future. I do and have been riding a DR-Z4S back-to-back with this bike, and pretty different road characteristics. The gearing feels tremendously different to me, so I do want to kind of maybe cover this bike's on-road performance as well as the SM's on-road performance in one dedicated video or 2 separate videos. I do have the 360 camera hanging off the front of the bike, as you can see there, so I'm not going to do any trail stuff unless I adjust that first. But here we go. Let's get off of the pavement. And again, I'm going to take it easy, especially because that camera there, it's rather expensive and I don't want to screw it up. But this bike is incredibly nimble. And all of my off-road experience prior to this DRZ is on the Tuareg 660, which is a 450-pound, at least the way I have it set up, adventure bike. We're getting into some light sand here. I doubt that translates through on the video, but boy, do I not like it. But what I can tell you is it's a lot better than the adventure bike. I don't want this video to be comparing the DRZ to the Tuareg 660. That is a really silly comparison, and it's not worth anybody's time. But that's kind of what's jumping out to me, is that while these tires are not great and not awesome off-road tires, they feel like they're cutting through the sand in a way that my more aggressive adventure tires on the Tuareg 660 certainly do not. So, actually kind of incredible. That and the bike is just obviously quite a nimble machine. So I'm already losing the camera from the off-road, so let me just put that in a better position. I'm gonna have to bust out the old backpack here. We'll put that camera in off-road mode. But while I do this, I do have to reiterate, this thing's so nimble. And when you hear people talking about the DRZ, you know, people call it an off-road pig, just like a heavy, unresponsive, crappy dual sport. But that's all relative. It kind of depends on what you're using it for. I like to think of the DRZ. Is that going to be annoying if I put it there? Let's turn it a little bit. Oh, it was kind of loose too. I like to think of the DRZ as an exploration bike. You know, you're not going to be competing in enduro, I hope. I suppose you could. You can kind of compete in enduro on an adventure bike if you'd like to bad enough. But this is exactly the bike I wanted. I don't want anything too crazy. I want a bike I can more comfortably explore on than the Tuareg. And I have really pushed the Tuareg, at least I think I've pushed it for what my actual skills are, because that's a confidence-inspiring bike. But this thing feels like riding a piece of air compared to riding the Tuareg, and that's on and off-road. But again, very different machines. I've got to stop bringing that up because you probably don't care about how this thing stacks up against an adventure bike. But look at this. Got a steep little section of trail here. I got some loose debris. Oh, that's kind of annoying, huh? We've got to make another adjustment. That should be better. But off-road performance, this is kind of exactly what I've been looking for. I don't want something crazy. I just like exploring, and this is kind of like a lower stakes version of exploration compared to exploring on the Tuareg, where I've been in plenty of situations where I kind of bit off more than I can chew, and it's hard to undo that on an adventure bike, especially when you're talking single track and things like that. You can be in a position where maybe you can't turn the bike around, but you really shouldn't proceed, and I think that'll be a little bit less likely on this machine. And along those lines, here's a nice little steep hill climb. We'll leave the modes as is, gravel mode with the more responsive throttle mapping, as well as the rear ABS off, not that we need it. It looks like here, I can tell, I'm going to go right over that. Probably doesn't look like much to you, but there's like a kind of chunk of a log there. I'm going to roll over it, which will lose traction in the rear before a loose-looking hill climb with these crappy tires, and we'll see how the bike does. We'll see how I do. Whew! That was a bit sketchier than I thought it would be, but I intentionally took a stupid line to see how the DRZ would compensate, and I can tell you I would not have gotten away with that on my Tuareg. I would have kind of been rolling backwards or sliding backwards, but again, dual sport. A lot better, even though the tires here are pretty much road tires. Whew! This thing is incredibly easy to off-road. Once more, I'm going to sound real big like a broken record here, but apples to oranges comparison, and all of that is relative. Had I been coming from like a KTM 350, boy, would I think this thing was an absolute terrible, horrible off-road pig. But coming from something bigger and that's a bit more to manage, holy shit, this is steep sand, deep sand. I'm going to be out and back, so I'll be going through this twice, and then we'll do a little bit of a trail section. But I'm happy. This is exactly what I was looking for. That felt great. Kind of correcting the bike as it waddled out from under me or slid out from under me. Looked like it, or felt like it took no effort. No stress on the legs compared to what I'm used to. Again, dual sport. I'm pretty excited for what this thing is capable of. I'm going to have to pass through that again. But this is really, I feel like I'm on a beach right now. Not my favorite thing, but the effort this takes, I kind of just let it float through. And I'm light on the front. I can feel the front just kind of veering away. It's getting a little better now. But it doesn't feel like there's so much weight on the front. My front tire is a lot thicker on my other bike, and that would cause it to kind of float higher and slide further out. Not an issue on this for obvious reasons there. Standing position, oh man, I don't want to stand over the front. I learned that lesson real quick right there. A little awkward. I do have long legs. I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but my inseam's maybe 33.5 inches, which is actually quite large or long. So standing back like this, I got a lot of tuck in my knees, and the bars feel like they are a far reach and way down on this bike. I don't really think I'll adjust that sort of thing. I like the ergonomics of the bike, just an observation. Well, cool. Off-road test number 1 successful. Dude, this thing is great. I don't want a high-strung, crazy competition machine that makes me feel like I've got to race and go fast and hit harder and harder trails. And that's something that led me mainly to the DRZ. Whew! Almost lost it there. Again, Street tires in the sand, terrible combination. I'm gonna hang over the back seat and try to float the front as best I can. Normally I'd like to go faster here, but there is a speed limit on this trail, and if I shift into a higher gear, I'm going to want to go faster. I doubt it's an issue. Oh shit. Okay, we're good. I'm gonna bring the Tuareg back up because when I bought the Tuareg, I kind of wanted a dual sport more than I wanted an adventure bike, but it was hard to find something that checked all my boxes in Colorado, and it led to me relying or wanting to purchase a bigger machine. I also really wanted fuel injection, so DRZ was off the list there. But something that happened with the Tuareg is it is such an incredible motorcycle, both on-road and off, but off-road is where that thing really, really shines. I think it's a massive, massive accomplishment for Aprilia that they made that thing and got it out, because it is just incredible. I love that bike. I've had it for years, and it's basically all of my off-road experience. Whew. Let me stop here for a bit. Whew. And let's look at the girl again. Oh, that's kind of deep. But when I bought the Tuareg, I wanted a bike to explore with. And the Tuareg gave me so much confidence that I started pushing my limits and pushing my limits and pushing my limits. That bike begs to be driven hard. Harder than I wanted to drive an adventure bike ever. Again, new off-road rider within the first 3 months of having the Tuareg. I off-roaded Colorado's deadliest mountain pass as a new rider, and the bike was still kind of on street tires and stuff. That bike begged me to push it and to push myself and to get better, and that never stopped. And my fear is that with a competition style bike or a high performance, high strung kind of bike, that habit will continue to grow, and it's not a habit I want. The reason I got into this whole off-road, on-road thing is because I enjoy exploring and discovering new areas, and what better way to do it than on a motorcycle where you're out there in it. That, and I've always loved riding motorcycles. But this video is not supposed to focus on why and how I chose the DRZ. It's supposed to be my first impressions. I have so much to say about this bike and so many thoughts about it, and I'm just so excited to have it, so it's hard to not break off on those tangents. There is a slightly chunkier, real, actual sort of off-road trail up here, at least the direction I'm heading, that I have off-roaded the Tuareg on, and I am going to take the DRZ out there and see how it does. I have a strong suspicion that I'm going to love it and that I'll be impressed with the way it handles compared to the Tuareg. Ooh, let's do the shortcut again. I gotta get my, whew. This bike lets me make mistakes in a way the Tuareg does not, and I like it a lot. I'm riding pretty crappy right now and being reckless with my leaning and throttle and momentum, but it's like I don't need momentum in the way I did on the Tuareg, even though that was pretty sloppy back there. Correcting this thing is just effortless. Down the steep hill. Oh, this is where I almost lost it earlier. I went around that log that I told you about. What a good time, man. I love being out here. Outside of that guy who is just enjoying his life, there's no one. It's pretty great. I don't have too much time to ride this trail that I'm going to, so I'm going to ride out a fair bit and then try to turn back after not too long. But that should be enough to get a good initial impression of this thing, and get a feel for how it feels off-road and whether or not I still feel as confident with it as I expected to. So this is the trail. I don't know who these guys are, but I got to tighten this camera up. Oh, it's that got loose. Well, I'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't want to lose my camera that badly. Hey there, sneaking through. Thank you, sir. Oh, that's embarrassing, having to put a foot down there like, oh, look at this noob. I gotta get my sun visor up. Oh, smells like they were smoking some sort of flowers, dude. I don't know if you guys saw anything on the video. I didn't see anything, but I could barely see with my sun visor down. What a good day to be those guys, dude. I gotta go back to work after this. It's going to be raining for the rest of the week. I wasn't able to get out and make this video or do this test ride yesterday and I won't be able to for the rest of the week, so I got to head out work, and I took an extended lunch to get out here and get this recorded. I really feel like I don't have to think when I off-road this thing. I get to just kind of focus loosely on the line I want to take and bop anywhere I want to go. A little log here. As you can see, or maybe not see, there's a lot of loose rock here. Or loose rock, embedded rock that's actually quite large. It probably doesn't come through in the video, but the movement of the bike hopefully comes through, so you can tell there are actual obstacles here. Oh, this is way more than enough bike for what I'm looking for. I feel like more often than not, this thing seems to get compared against bikes it's not trying to compete against. I'm not even standing. This is actually quite bizarre to me. It's a completely different experience to what I'm used to. Oh, it's getting a little rough here. I'm not going to be out too long because we're getting to noon, which means I got to start heading back. So I previously, this isn't going to come through on video at all, but I previously dropped the Tuareg going up that trail there. We'll go down there, get a cool shot of the bike. Actually, can I cut through here? Definitely a tall machine, so it's not too comfortable just bopping around in slow motion on these rocks. But it's manageable. Obviously, your mileage may vary depending on how comfortable you are or are not. Let's get this thing into a better looking position here. You can absolutely just manhandle this thing. All right, let's look at the unit. Oh man. Oh, yeah, learning how to walk here. Let me grab a picture of this thing. I'll probably make this the thumbnail of the video, so if you made it this far in after clicking on the video, congratulations, you get the inside scoop. Look at the girl. Again, I think this is a beautiful motorcycle. I don't think I've heard anybody complain about the way this thing looks, but I'm sure some people aren't happy with it. I will say, I personally think the bike is styled a bit more aggressively than what it's built to be. That's not a complaint, though. More just an observation. So yeah, I was recording when I dropped the Tuareg over here. I don't know if you can tell how kind of crazy this is. I think I got stuck here for a bit. It was a couple weeks ago. But taking a 450-pound adventure bike up this was obviously not a good idea, but like I mentioned earlier, I just got too in the habit of pushing my limits on that bike. And I love riding alone and doing that and potentially being able to, get pinned against a rock under that thing. And I don't know who's going to find me out here. It was time for a change. Okay, the microphone's still working. That's good. I've been having issues with it. So while you might not be impressed with the way I handle this thing, maybe I don't turn the motorcycle around like a real dirt biker. Turning it around like this is not an option on the Tuareg. That should be enough to get out of here, right? And I will just want to say, while I have done some crazy rides on the Tuareg, I'm still a new rider. I don't know what I'm doing. Please be easy on me in the comments if you do want to drop some insults, but I do appreciate some insight. And some of the insight I had in my earlier Tuareg videos helped make me a much better rider. Oh, there goes my mirror. That's going to annoy the crap out of me if I don't adjust it now. Bike's bone stock. I don't even want to think about what I want to do to the bike, but I do know I'll be tuning out all of the emissions nonsense as soon as I possibly can. Though I'll probably get a few hundred miles on the bike before I bother sending off the ECU to get that fixed up. So weird little chunk up here. I didn't have the right hand position on the clutch there, which made doing that a little bit tougher than it needed to be. Oh my god, dude. You can just keep this front tire, or at least correct, with such little effort. A completely new experience to me. Oh no, I'm gonna lose the fucking camera. Let's try this. Alright, that should be tight enough. I hope it is. Yeah, I feel like on the heavier bike that I'm used to, I just got really scared I was going to knock my camera off there. On the heavier biking that I'm used to, it almost doesn't feel like an option to sit through the technical stuff because you've got to shift your body weight and change your weight on the pegs so aggressively to help balance out where that bike might end up going. On this bike, that is not nearly as much of a thing. Standing helps. It just feels more like a choice than it does an obligation. And you know, sorry I'm not being a speed warrior coming through here, but new bike, I'm not really the most extreme of riders, and it's got no protection on it, and I'd feel so sad dropping this before I get like at least some bar protectors on here, you know. We're going back to the flower smokers. Yep, they're still there. Unfortunately, I need to cut through to not go in the mud. Oh yeah, they are smoking. See you guys, have fun. What a life, man. Yeah, whatever. So I will regret it if I don't go ahead and talk about the road performance to end this video. I know I've probably lost most people by now because I have no idea what I'm doing on YouTube, just as much as I have no idea what I'm doing when I ride off-road. But let's get some road riding in here, put the ABS back on. I have been kicking that rear ABS on a lot. I'm not used to the lightweight bike with the skinny back tire, so it's been easy to kind of lock that thing up and trigger the ABS. But gearing, obviously quite short. This thing does still have 5 gears. I'm not here to talk too much about the specs of the DRZ. 5th gear is quite long. I often enter 5th gear at the low 40 mph range, and it feels like 5th gear still has a ton to go past like 65. I think this thing will do closer to 90, but I've not really pushed it. I'm not doing like the, you know, directly by the book. Oh, I shifted a little early there. Directly by the book braking on the bike, but for the first 600 or so miles, you are supposed to keep it below half throttle, and I've been respecting that for the most part. I might have broke it once so far, but I'm trying to, you know, at least stay pretty close to the manual there. Though I'm not going to get into the philosophy of braking in engines in this video. But the gearing's been adequate for here. I am in the northeastern United States, and got a lot of roads like this up here where you don't have to go highway speeds to get places. If I were still off-roading in Colorado, and having to drive to the trails on this thing, I think this thing would be quite strung out, but that's not where I'm at right now. So, gears 1 through 4 seem very, very short. They're probably really similar to what they were on the previous DRZ. I'm pretty sure those ratios are actually unchanged. And 5th gear is pretty long on this machine. It's actually kind of more stable in 5th at high speeds than some of the other dual sport options are in 6th gear at the same speeds. But I do believe they extended the final drive ratio of this transmission as well as on the Supermoto variant of the bike. That said, you don't buy this bike to enjoy the highway rides to the trails. It's a level of compromise, and if you're able to do slower speed rides like this bike is so nimble and so willing to accelerate and lean to the corners. Not as much as the Supermoto, because you do have that 21-inch front tire, and it kind of almost like you need to like have it fall into the turn a little bit in a way you don't have to on a sport bike or something else. But like, this is a dirt bike
that's built for the street. And another initial impression I'd like to share in this video as well is I think the suspension is great. This is like KYB or Kayaba suspension. I haven't ridden enough to really have too strong of an opinion on it, but I'm more impressed with it out of the box than I was with the suspension on the Tuareg 660, though I think as an overall package, the Tuareg 660 does have better or higher end componentry, at least for the off-road riding there. Time will tell how this is, since I believe we've got to kind of abuse the suspension for a while before it will perform kind of the standard way. Felt like it took thousands of miles to break the Tuareg suspension in, so I don't know what to expect here, it being a lighter motorcycle and all. But I do appreciate there's a firmness to it, but the plushness up top has been excellent. Again, I've not done enough riding to really have too strong of an opinion there. But if I have gone to the trail, ridden the other trail, and I'm still on the road talking about this bike, it's already too long of a video. I have plenty more than I want to cover on the DRZ. If there's anything in particular you'd like to see about this bike, let me know. For the next few weeks or even the next month or so, I'm going to be quite excited about this machine and coming up with a bunch of videos and sharing my experience as I get to know this thing. But thank you a ton for watching, especially this far into the video. I appreciate you being here. I hope you're at least a little bit excited for the DRZ. And I will catch you in the next one. See you later.